I am here with Stefan, correct?
Stefan. But yeah, that's good enough.
Stefan,
That's close.
perfect.
Yeah.
And he runs Genesis Mutations and is located in South Africa, specializing in ball python morphs, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Nice. Awesome.
I actually renamed like 2 weeks ago. It used to be
Okay.
Persia Exotics, and like just after changing the Instagram post, you guys messaged me. I was like, I'm glad
Awesome.
I
So
changed it.
good move. That was a good move. That's
Yeah.
good to see. I
Yeah.
liked the name actually. I saw it and I was like, that's really cool. It's like reminds me kind of like of the beginning of different
Yeah.
types. You know what I mean? It gives that vibe
Yeah.
and I love it. So I'm gonna
And
start out with asking you kind of what got you into ball pythons and why you love them.
okay. So the love for ball pythons actually didn't start with ball pythons. It was like snakes in general. Growing up, I think I was about 5 or 6 years old. My mom and my brother used to have corn snakes, and they also had a gray rat, which was pretty feisty. And
That's what
we
I have
also
actually. That's crazy.
the gray rats are awesome.
They're
Did
amazing.
not like my brother for some reason. None of my snakes like my brother.
Right. They had something against them.
Yeah. And then I got a yellow anaconda. And as I got the yellow anaconda, I was like, okay, this snake is so freaking awesome. I didn't know about ball pythons until like grade 10. One of my
Okay.
mates showed me ball pythons, like, what kind of snake is this? And yeah, he actually got me into ball pythons. That was about 12 years ago. And 4 years ago, I actually started breeding and getting back into it.
That's awesome. And I gotta say, like I did, because I always creep people's Instagrams and social media. You have got some beautiful morphs on your page. So, anyone, just a heads up who's watching this, please go check out his Instagram profile because these morphs are absolutely stunning. Which really leads me to my next question: is how does that breeding process work for you? Is there certain things you need to do, obviously, to attain certain morphs, or
So what I've done over the couple of years, as so the friend that got me into ball pythons, he was a fatal gecko breeder and leopard gecko breeder, and he knew a lot of people in the industry, and he introduced me to a couple guys. And as I started like communicating with them, I actually started learning about the genetics, about the morphs, and I basically went off of what they taught me. So one of the uh, oldest breeders in South Africa, BPM Rassi, he's like my mentor and very close friend. So
that's
he
awesome.
he he teach me like quite a lot, and yeah.
That's kind
So
of where that background education came from.
yeah
That's
yeah
cool. And that's smart to have a mentor too, someone that you can kind of go to and be like, "Hey, what do you recommend?" And I'm having trouble with this,
it definitely helps, especially when I make mistakes. He gets to the point like, you don't do this, and I was like, okay, I'm sorry, and then change and
Right.
learn from
And
it.
but that's the whole thing, especially with ball
Yeah.
pythons. And I imagine especially when it comes to breeding them, there's already so much when it comes to like the caring and the taking care of them and the setup, as you know, that kind of goes
Yes.
overlooked. So when it comes to breeding, mistakes are always being made. We're just constantly learning, I imagine that's
Yeah.
probably one of those processes, same as spiders.
Yeah, it is. It was quite a big thing because my first season basically bombed out because I didn't do exactly what I was supposed to. I had one entire clutch for the entire year, and then I learned from it, and then went up to like 15, 20, and then
Wow.
the next one is going to be big. I'm hoping, planning about 50 pairs this year.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Dude, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank
What
you.
is the
Yeah.
how long does that process normally take from like egg to incubation to hatching?
So when you start to pair them, it takes about 4 to 8 months, give or take, for them to build follicles.
Wow.
And then once they have follicles, they ovulate. You'll see like a big swelling. Sometimes you can actually miss the ovulation, but then it's about 21 days for them to have a pre-lay shed, and then give or take 30 to 50 days before they lay eggs. I have noticed that some females actually skip the pre-lay shed.
Really?
It was weird. It doesn't often happen. I had 3 or 4 females that actually just skipped the pre-lay shed, and then one day I got there and it's like, boom, there's eggs. And I was like, shit, I need to get everything
Whoa.
ready.
Like
It's like,
Spider-Man, go.
yeah.
Get out of there, let's go.
And then from the eggs, it's 60 days in the incubator for them to hatch.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's
so
a solid amount of time, but also, I mean, fairly quick for a couple snakes, right?
yeah, it is quite quick, but in while the eggs is in the incubator, you can't wait for that day for them to poop and come out. It's like it's just the excitement to see what you actually get, because most of the projects and stuff that I want to work with, I try and think outside the box, if I can say it that way. I want to do
Yeah.
something that I haven't seen before. So I
I love
want
that.
to see, is the way that I'm thinking going to bomb, or is it going to be something very cool?
Right. You're
Um,
all about like the kind of, I don't want to say experiment, 'cause that can always be such a controversial word, but
yeah,
finding that uniqueness in that pattern.
yes, yeah,
That's got to be really
and
exciting too when they hatch and you see that. You're like, oh my gosh.
yeah, it makes a big
Hey,
difference
cat.
to actually see them in person, or once they're out the egg. It's just amazing. And the weird thing is, once they're out there, you still don't get to see the actual snake until they had their first shed. Some of these snakes, they change so dramatically after their first shed.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just amazing.
So it's like a complete color pattern shift. It's not just like they're getting brighter, they're getting duller. Like you'll see different
Yes.
patternations in them. Wow.
Yeah. And some of them, they actually, you won't actually see their true color within like the first couple months. Some of them you actually need to wait for them to actually color up and
Oh,
change.
wow. See, I had no idea. I know so little about the breeding process of ball pythons that all of that is so fascinating to me on how you get the different morphs and how that takes and just the process itself, you know. There was one species that I found particularly beautiful. I do not remember the name of the morph, but I saw it on your page
Yeah.
and it looked almost like a black and white photograph.
Black and white photograph.
It was just like
I'm,
black and
I'm,
gray, I think.
I'm trying to remember because actually I can't recall. I
No,
can't
you're
recall
fine. But
which.
I had seen it and I'm like, that's really beautiful. Do you always know like that you will inevitably over time get that snake when it hatches, or is it all kind of like a gamble?
It's a gamble. It really
Okay.
is a
Yeah.
gamble. Yeah. Yeah, no,
Because I know,
it's a
I mean,
total
like,
gamble.
go
Yeah.
ahead, you're good.
No, it's a total gamble. Like I'm working with the genetics, you get like percentages just to give you an idea of what the chances are that you'll hit what you want. And the risks that I'm taking, it's like very small percentages, like 3%, 6% chance of hitting what I actually want. I have done quite well hitting the odds, I have to
Yeah.
say. I
Yeah,
do think I
definitely.
know the one you're talking about. It was on a wooden plaque gray snake with a slightly black pattern.
I believe so.
I-
I actually saved it. I'll pull it up for you if you're okay with that.
yeah, no, that's perfect.
And I'm going to show everyone who's watching because you need to see it. It's beautiful. Here we go. Genesis Mutations. And yes. Or maybe it's more of like a yellow pastel dinker het pied with the hurricane pied. I don't know if
Oh,
anyone can see this. Probably not because it's like, yeah, no one can see it.
so so I know exactly which one it is. So that danger gene, we actually proved it genetic. this year will be the second year trying to actually see whether it's co-dominant or dominant. Last year did not plan out, so we didn't get any eggs to get the super form or to see if it is co-dominant. So, but that I want to, I need to talk to my partner about the name for the gene, but I do want to actually name it Genesis, just because it's the first gene. The name changed, so
It kind of flows with the whole thing.
yes,
That's the OG
exactly,
of Genesis.
yes, that
That's
is.
amazing. Okay, I love that. I like that name too. That's a solid morph name. Like the Genesis morph. It's got a ring to it.
Yeah, it sounds good.
It does. That's really cool. Okay, so going back to breeding, we kind of talked a little bit about what that process looks like. And I've always
Yeah.
been curious, just in my own personal mind, how is it for someone who, like you, who has bred and raised up these baby ball pythons and you see them and you see how beautiful they are? What is your end goal for them? Are they, do you keep some of them? Are you hoping they go to good homes? Do you intend to, convention wise, how does that work?
So I have to say I have refused to sell snakes to some people because I know that it's not going to be a good home.
Right.
So I do try, and if someone buys from me, I try to see, do they know what they're doing? I give them the information that they need. Always at least send them links and then tell them, ask me questions before you buy them. Not, I'll keep the animal for you. Just let me know when you're ready, and then I'll ask them questions. And when they say, I can see it's good to go, we'll rehome. But so far, I think about 50% of them I've kept back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is hard finding people that are willing to like spend that money on that upkeep for the animal and the progression as they
Yes.
get bigger. But I will say, just to put it out there, I do applaud you for being able to. I see it as a level of confidence to be able to deny someone and be
Yeah.
like, listen, this isn't appropriate for this animal, because that really shows that you care about the welfare and the well being of that animal more than
Yeah.
just, yeah, sure, here you go, let me make some money off of it. And I think that's important.
It really is. And for me, it's not about the money. It's about the snake and about the genetics. It's just something about the genetics of these animals that is, I'm telling you, if like I would have been into boas and all of like any other snake if they had these kinds of color pattern and like different kinds of morphs. I would have been
Yes.
into like all of them.
Yes. And I think that's the big thing too. That kind of leads me into, I've heard so many people say that ball pythons are, and to some extent I do agree, they are a little overrated just because they're so
Yeah.
oversaturated. But I think the reason for that is because not only do they have a phenomenal personality, but like you just said, that colorations that they come in are just, they're endless.
Yeah, and the thing is, they constantly find new genetics and prove it out. And with the shade testing that recently came out, it does help a lot. And the new genetics, it helps to create something new. And my main focus is to try and make something new to actually be. So, to be honest, one of my friends he's in Cape Town. We talk almost on a daily basis. And he asked me a while back what my goal is with the ball pythons. And I told him with Billy and Austin's, I think it's mutation domination or mutation. What is, I'm so bad with names. But they've got a
I am
pick of the
too.
week. They've got a pick of the week on their YouTube. And I told them I want to create something that will end up on their pick of the week, just to say like this comes from my collection.
Right. Just to be, this is Genesis Mutations. This is what we
Yes.
are. Yes, this is what
Yeah,
you
that's
are. That's awesome. I love that. When it comes to the husbandry, right? Because
yes.
that one's always tricky. So, and I like to ask this question because I'm not judgmental, but it does throw people off.
Yeah.
Do you prefer, as a breeder, the rack system, or do you prefer to have individual enclosures?
So I, for the only reason, so I prefer the rack system,
Yeah.
but the only reason is space.
Okay. Yeah,
That
that's
that's
smart.
that's the only reason why. If I had way more space, I would definitely have enclosures.
Okay. And because I've seen snakes in a rack system, and I know there's always
Yeah.
this, debate between like, no, don't keep them in a rack, it's cruel, or like, ah, keep them in the rack, they're fine.
Yeah.
And really, it's about what works for you and what works for your snake.
Yes.
If they're comfortable, they're comfortable. What are you gonna do?
Yes.
And especially
Yeah.
as a breeder, that's another thing I think a lot of people don't take into consideration is just debunking the rack myths.
Yeah.
As long as those snakes are healthy, as long as they're fine. But these breeders, like you need them because these snakes are producing so much at a time. You need to
Yes.
have space.
Yeah. And the thing is, you can have the best enclosure, and the habitat will, like the how can I say it? You can have like the best setup, but if the your husbandry is wrong, the snake
These are
it's not good for the
I don't mean to
snake.
interrupt you. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Chris has put up some of the pictures of your morphs, so I just want to let you know that they were up there. They're beautiful.
Yeah,
If you wanted to
so
dissect on
that
them, you're welcome to.
no, so that is the gene that I want to call Genesis.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about. You guys needed to see. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's I'm very excited for that.
Thanks, Chris. Go ahead. You're good. You're very
Yeah.
excited.
Sorry, I actually lost track of what I was about to say.
You're fine. I have ADHD really hard, so it'll sometimes hit me, and I'm just like, wait, what was I just saying? But no, we were talking about the rack systems and like enclosures,
Yeah,
things like that, and kind of debunking the whole rack
yeah.
myth of
So
they're not bad.
yes, yeah. So the thing is, with you can have the best enclosure to your mind, but if the snake is not happy or your husbandry is incorrect, it won't make a difference. For me, to keep the humidity the way it's supposed to be, for the snakes, the rack system works a little bit better. It's easier
Really?
to control the humidity and the temperatures, in my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. I never knew that. I never even thought about that. Why do you feel that is? I'm just curious. That's kind of cool.
So with the rack systems, I use cocoa husk. That's my preferred bedding. I have tried multiple kinds of beddings, but this one works the best. With ball pythons, you would want the humidity to be at lowest 60%.
Right.
Uh, so the humidity in, let's say you put a hide in there, the hide humidity can go up to 80%. And you also would want the humidity a little bit higher, especially when they go into shed.
Right.
And
Especially with
the
eye
access,
caps.
yes, that is important. I have had a rescue in the past where we had to unfortunately take out the eye because the person that didn't take care of the snake left the eye caps on and it got infected.
Mm, that's sad. It's sad. I've seen a corn snake like that as well.
Yeah,
It really is so avoidable, like you said, with the humidity.
yeah. And the honestly, the best thing with the snakes is just to check up on them quite often. I regularly go into the snake room to check how's the water, how are they doing, do I see anything weird, and yeah,
I
it's
think that's a good point you bring up too, is checking on your snakes so regularly, even if you're not a breeder, you're just a keeper. I'm always checking my python because it was last night. He was, doing his thing, climbing around, and I noticed he had these very odd looking scales on the bottom. Well, they're little tiny
yeah,
cuts. They look like they're healing just fine. I put some, stuff on it to kind of make it feel better and sanitize it, whatever. But That's another thing that I find with ball pythons is that they can end up just getting really random scale issues, skin issues, things like that. You have to be checking on them or else you could miss
Yes,
that, you know?
yes,
It's
yeah.
really important.
It is. It's really important, and also one of the main reasons why I also check up on the snakes often is because of their and they need to have fresh water like
Yes.
constantly. So sometimes they swirl the water bowl, so then you need to disinfect it, clean it, give them fresh waters, and you don't want swirled water to stay inside even for a day. So as soon as you see it, it's best to just change it, give them clean water.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
putting that into perspective, just for anyone watching, it's like if you leave a glass of water out on your bed overnight, it tastes slightly different in the morning. I don't know what it is, but slightly different. And you're like, this ain't right. So imagine with your snake, an animal that's more sensitive to that, more prone to those, um, fungal infections or mouth rot. You don't want to have that issue. And changing out that water is a good source of making sure bacteria is not sitting in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
Definitely.
definitely a good thing. When it comes to cleaning, I do at least 2 to 3 times a week. I do spot cleaning until I see that I need to change all the substrate in the enclosure.
How often do you change the substrate by chance? Like as a
Um, it
full.
de- so because I'm using cocoa husk, it actually lasts quite long because normally when they make a mess, it's just a tiny bit. But I'd say at least once a month, once every 2 months, depending
Okay.
on the actual tub.
Okay. I was gonna ask because I've heard some people say 3 months, and I'm like, try to stick around 2 months because that spot clean. That is the thing about ball pythons I love is spot cleaning is so easy with them for the most part. But it is still important to change it out. But I think it's nice to note that with ball pythons, I think another reason that they're great to keep is that if you're looking for an animal, you just have to spot clean easily. But
Yeah,
also an animal that you only have to change out every 2 months. That's kind of a bonus. You're not buying substrate every week like a lot of lizards.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
geckos.
That is a massive bonus. Yeah,
Yeah. As far as cage size, so I know we do racks, and I think racks are absolutely amazing
yes,
for what they work for. When it comes to people like myself who just keep like one, maybe two snakes, just because there's so much stuff in our house, it's ridiculous. I have a 120-gallon enclosure, and that's for a 4.5, 5 foot ball python. What do you usually recommend to people as they get adults? Is that a good size, or do you like to give them a little more room to roam?
so a general idea of getting a size is you want to have the snake fully extended on the length of the enclosure. So that will be more or less a good indication of what size enclosure you want. But I have done a bit of research in the past on enclosures themselves, just out of curiosity, and I checked. Where did I put that note? Sorry.
You're
So
fine.
on for adults, I would say because you don't often get any ball pythons that goes above the 3 kilo mark, so they don't tend to get that big. But you get the odd few, like you said, with the one that you have, he's quite big.
Yeah,
Um,
for a male, he's pretty big. He's about 5 feet.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
yeah.
So that
I love him, but he's a big boy.
so that's basically about as big as the standard ball pythons get. For your standard size ball pythons, I'd say up to a 40-gallon enclosure would actually be quite well. You can
Oh wow.
have for hatchlings, you can actually set them up for quite a couple months in a 10-gallon enclosure for a hatchling ball python. You can keep them
Really?
in there for up to like 250, 300 grams, and they would
Okay.
actually live quite nicely.
Okay. That's very good to know. I know for mine, because he's a little bit bigger, I kind of got to go with the
Yeah,
larger size. But with the average, they
yeah.
can do a 40-gallon, 50-gallon, and they're usually okay.
Yeah, and even with adults or sub-adults up until like just under a kilo, like 800 grams, 900 grams, you can get away with a 20-gallon enclosure.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I think
So
I see, I love how I'm so in shock because
yeah,
there's just so much out there that's controversial on you need to make sure they have space to climb versus space to do this, but they really are a pretty, I don't want to say lazy, but they're a very
yeah,
low maintenance as far as movement type
yeah.
of animal, you know?
And the big thing with ball pythons is if you give them something to climb on, they will. It's not that they prefer to or not. If they get a chance, they
It's
will.
just there.
It's yeah,
Right.
like I know the like most of the ball pythons that gets sold in the market came from Togo, Benin, and Ghana, and they the only time they're actually been found in like trees and stuff like that is when it's rainy season. The rest of the time you'll find them in the ground. So
Interesting.
they take refuge in trees if they have to.
So it's really just a matter of like hiding or defense or safety if they were to actually
Yes,
want to climb intentionally.
yes, and you get the odd few ball pythons that's very curious. Um, so they
Yeah.
wouldn't, like those ones, they would most likely like to climb onto things.
Yeah. I think that's how he cut himself is he likes to climb, but he's so heavy that he fell and I think something cuz it's not bad, but I'm like, "You little dude." Ugh. But I did want to debunk that with like enclosures because a lot of people think that they need to set up, you know, 2, 3 stories for ball pythons. I'm like, they if you do, they will, and I'm sure like it does help with
Yeah,
enrichment, but they don't necessarily require it, you know.
no,
Mm.
no, they don't really require it. No.
What do you do for enrichment by chance? Like, what do you recommend? Do you like a lot of plants? Do you find they like more foliage in there, or
So with the rack systems, we I normally just put hides in because they tend to either go behind the hide. They don't necessarily use the hide itself. They push it around and
right?
go
Never.
like go behind it.
Yeah.
So with the rack systems, I don't normally use anything else for enrichment. No.
Okay, so they just kind of like hang out in their own, just like mine does. They hang out in their own little spot.
Yeah. No,
And I
most
know
of the
when it.
time. Sorry.
No,
Most of
go
the
ahead. You're
time,
good.
most of the time when you open the tub, you'll find the same snake,
Hi.
well, with the snake in the same space for like today you'll open it up, he's there. Tomorrow you open up same spot.
Right. It's like
So
you've been moved
they
for
quite
3 days, man.
yeah yeah
I think that's
yeah
another thing telling people is like anyone who wants to bring a ball python home, and just to clarify for everyone, I want to reiterate again, I do not breed them. I am not expertise. This is all this guy. But as a keeper, you know, they don't do much. They really
no
don't. So if you're looking for a really active snake, these aren't the great beginner snakes, I think, for the most part, if
yes.
you're willing to put in the work. But yeah, they don't do much. They just kind of hang out in one spot for about 2 weeks and then they decide they want to go to another one.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But I have to say they do tend to have habits. So you can actually, so if I had one snake in particular, every time I took her out of the enclosure, I put her on my shoulders, and I did it like 3 or 4 times, and for like every time afterwards, if I go into the snake room, she's up against the tub, she wants to get out. She literally just hangs on my shoulders and wraps herself around my arm, and that's it. She just stays there. She doesn't. If I want to put her back, she comes. She just comes back out. So they do tend to get habits um,
That's really
if you
cool.
let
And
them.
that yeah, that's actually true cuz I taught mine how to when he knows food is coming when I do like a on him. His kill list
Yeah.
is right here, but he's learned if he hears that I don't have food, and if he doesn't hear it at all, he's like, all right, it's time to eat, and they start to learn when to come out. It's smart.
I know a lot of people say ball pythons aren't really the smartest if you compare it to other snakes,
They're so smart.
but but yeah, they do tend to learn quite quickly, and yeah, yeah, they do.
They do. No, you're right. I think a lot of people see them as like you said, very stupid because they do kind of like derpy things. But I think they
Yeah,
are very intelligent snakes if you take the time to like take care of them properly, or raise them up right. They sound like children, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
They can
The-
learn. They're very smart.
yeah. And
Why
the
do you
thing is,
think?
hmm,
Go ahead. You're good.
that
You're
you
fine.
actually only start to notice things like that the more time you spend with them. And the thing
Right.
is, if you have just one, you don't. I won't say you don't spend as much time with it, but if you've got like, unfortunately, as many as I do, you spend a lot more time with different ones, and you start
Right.
to find weird things, things that you never knew they did. Yeah,
Different
it's
personality traits or
yes,
weird things they do. Like, why is he sleeping
yes,
under the water dish?
yes.
Yes, absolutely. As far as like the care and husbandry goes, just because we're kind of on that topic,
Yes.
um, when they are younger, do they? Because I know some snakes have like different requirements, and mine was actually a rescue, so I got him as an adult. And although I've had younger ones in the past, people can judge me. My parents made mistakes and let me have these snakes when I was too young. Um, are there any requirements for babies versus adults that are different as far as like temperature, humidity, things like that?
So temperature and humidity is more or less the same. I prefer to have the smaller snakes in smaller enclosures. Just I have noticed that some of them stress out if you put them into big enclosures. I have found that, especially with some of the snakes, even where they like sub-adults, sometimes they go off feed, and it's not normal for that particular snake. I just change the enclosure or give them a smaller enclosure, and then they go back on feeding. So sometimes
Interesting.
it's
A
there's a
little
lot
too
of things.
stressful.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly where it's coming from. I have one particular snake, and he is a spaz. I don't know why, but he's a total spaz. As soon as I have him in the one tub, he's feeding perfectly fine 2 3 weeks. Then he stops feeding for like 2 or 3 weeks again. Then I need to put him
Huh.
into a darker enclosure, which is like just put a hide in or darken it. Then he eats well for a few weeks. Then he wants to go back to the one without.
What a diva.
So yeah, it's
That's hilarious. But that's like one of the personality things where you're like, why are you the one doing this out of all of you?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't think we actually talked about it. What are their heat requirements by chance? I mean, I know I
So
want to hear it from you though.
yeah. So I try and keep the ambient temperature at least at 28 degrees Celsius. For winter, especially when it comes to breeding season, we drop it with at least 1 or 2 degrees. And then for the hotspot, I prefer to have it at 31, high 31, 31.5 degrees at the
Okay.
hotspot. Yeah.
Perfect. So just for like translation purposes, for
Yeah. Sorry.
us, just
Sorry.
no, no,
So
no. Oh, you
I've
have
got it
it. That's
here.
right. You
Yeah.
have it. Got you.
Yeah, I forgot about that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so
No, you're
ambient,
good.
so the the ambient temperature is about 82 degrees,
Okay.
and the hotspot's around about 90 degrees Celsius.
All right.
Oh,
Yes, that's what I was
Fahrenheit,
thinking.
Fahrenheit,
It's
Fahrenheit.
about
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, 80 to 90. No, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Absolutely. Thank
yeah,
you. But that's what I was going to clarify is about 80 and then 90. You've got a pretty high temperature for this snake. They like
yes,
those higher heats.
yeah. And with the so if you look at where they come from with the humidity side, because you want them to have at least 60% humidity. if you look at the charts for Ghana, Benin, and Togo, the low humidity is just at high 50%. And then in the rainy season, it can go up to high 90s. So
Right. So it can get pretty high up there.
it can get pretty high up there. So
And
I
that
do
kind of
keep,
go
yeah.
ahead, you're good.
So
No, you're
with
fine.
the, I keep the humidity at lowest 60%. It's only when they want to shed, we just mist them a bit just to get that humidity up, just for shedding.
Definitely. And that's what I was actually going to say with the the rack systems is how they hold humidity and whatnot. Is I noticed when I had first got my ball python, he was a rescue, so I didn't have the tank size for him, so I had to just kind of quickly think on a brim. And I had purchased one that is actually for a bearded dragon, right? So there is a lot of cross ventilation. So I've taped off sides and used sealant and whatnot, and he'll be getting an upgrade soon. Thankfully, that's all glass. But I think that's a huge thing that people should consider too is the enclosures. Like these rack systems, like you said, they're holding humidity because they don't have a lot of cross ventilation, right?
Yes. Yeah, so it doesn't. With the rack systems, normally they on the top side where the tubs slide in, you've got like a small gap, and that's where the ventilation is. But what I normally do is, especially with the wooden rack systems, I put holes inside the tubs on the front and backs just to add a little bit more ventilation.
Nice.
With the aluminium racks that you get, they actually have holes on top of the plastic sheet above. That's like splitting the tubs.
Nice. So you're still getting that airflow in there for them, but you're still locking in that humidity at the same time.
Yes.
And that's a huge thing with like I just wanted to personally like bring that up as well and get the confirmation from you cuz I made that mistake with my ball python at first with this. And so, when you go to purchase a ball python, definitely considering the size of the tank. And not only that, but how it's set up. You don't want something that's made for a desert style animal because these are
No.
tropical snakes.
Yeah. Yeah. I have seen some strange things with the pet shops keeping ball pythons. People don't
Yeah.
necessarily know how to actually keep the animals properly.
Right. And I actually have a friend who works at a pet store, and she'll text me here and there about some of the reptiles that they have. And the ball pythons I've seen, you have three of them in an enclosure, and I'm like, hold on, these are solitary animals, right?
So you can actually keep more, but we prefer not to.
Okay.
It's it's easier to have them separate, but there isn't actually they wouldn't necessarily fight. When it comes to breeding season, males would tend to fight or fight with the females and um, like that. But if you keep females together, I wouldn't say do it, but I have seen people do it, and they say they haven't found any problems.
They've done it
Um,
successfully.
yeah,
Awesome.
so
Does that have
it
any kind of like special requirements? Do they need to get a bigger tank since they have two of them, or
in my opinion, I think so because I've never looked into it, and I'm not going to keep more than
right?
one.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so I'm not entirely sure about that one, but I do think they may need to get a little bit bigger enclosure.
Right. I was just curious because I'd seen them housed together, and I know sometimes people will say, "Yeah, you can absolutely put them together," and sometimes you separate them. And personalities, they're all different. Ball pythons are known for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but being pretty docile and tolerant of
Yeah,
being handled. But that just doesn't necessarily go across the board for all of them. There's some that are just
yeah.
like, I don't want to be touched.
Yeah, so what I've noticed is, especially the ones that seem aggressive, there's actually a reason why they are aggressive, so they can be a little bit territorial. Um, or they just feel threatened. But mostly I found that that's the only reasons why they would be aggressive, if they feel threatened. Um, yeah.
Right. They're not going to just come at you unless you're backing them in a corner. And even then, it takes a lot. They're going to want to go into that like ball position before they try to come at you sideways. Are
Yes.
there, I'm actually going to ask you because Chris just hopped on here and asked a really good question. Is there anything in South Africa where you're located that you're actually not allowed to keep?
There is a very big list of things that. So with the carpet pythons, we are only allowed to keep, I think, the Bredleys.
Okay.
The other species, we're not allowed to keep. I just know there is an actual entire forum that you can follow to see how many, like they've got lists of many things that we're not allowed to keep. I heard that they're going to put a stop to caimans, so we won't be allowed to keep caimans anymore. So it's actually a very long list.
Oh, wow. Okay. And caimans, we are talking about the caiman, like the actual caiman,
Mm,
right? Okay,
yes.
yeah. Because my brain is always shocked. It takes so much space and room and effort to have a caiman, and I don't really know how I feel about that. Keeping certain alligators, crocodiles. I don't know. As long as you have the resources,
Yes.
those can be a hard
So
one because they're such a big species and they are so wild. Even in captivity, they maintain that wild nature.
most of the so we've I've noticed that the caimans that we get here is mostly the dwarf caimans that
Oh,
they
okay.
imported. Um, I would have actually liked to keep one until one of my friends said, "Don't you're going to get in trouble one day." So I'd rather
Oh
not.
man,
But those things are so freaking awesome.
they're so cool. I didn't think about the dwarf ones. They're adorable.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy. I'm like, they're so cute. It's not a hamster or a cat, but they're cute. I love them.
I definitely keep one as a dog. And it's like this is my dog.
Yeah, free
Came like a
roaming.
bit. Yeah.
That would be really cool, actually. Like, I'm down with that. That's awesome. Oh man. Is there any advice I wanted to ask you that you would give to anyone who's interested in keeping ball pythons or even anyone who's looking to start breeding them? What should they expect from that?
So, in my opinion, best thing to do is become friends with a breeder that you trust, because they would help you with whatever you get stuck with, and do as much as research as you can. Because even now, I haven't been doing it for long. I've been doing this for 4 years, and I'm still learning. Um, and it's continuous. So best is rather make friends with a good breeder, and or as many breeders as you can, because these guys would have your back. They can teach you a lot.
And especially just to kind of like roll off what you just said is
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask, because I know some people, especially nowadays in this day and age, can be so scary to confront people sometimes. But a lot of the breeders that I've spoken to, I'm sure that you've spoken to, they really do have your back. So don't be scared to ask them because they'll help you. They're willing to say, hey, here's what you should or shouldn't do, or here's what you can change, or anything really.
Yeah, I also used to be one of those people who's very afraid to ask questions until
Me
I
too.
met my mentor, and he was like, "No, just ask the freaking question and get it over with." And I was like, okay, now it's way easier to get the answers that you need if you just ask the questions.
Right. And it's definitely hard, it's scary. I was definitely like that at first too. Just because there was a level of knowledge I think that they had, that I didn't have and I didn't possess, especially when it comes to newer reptiles I would bring home. But they were always so nice and it's super awkward at first, but I feel like it's worth it in the long run and it can really help you succeed in that.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Um, so we have a bit of a benefit compared to the guys in the US. The community this side is very small, so it's way easier to reach out to anyone in the community this side. There's actually groups filled with all the breeders almost, and you can just reach out to anyone. And it's very easy.
That's amazing. So you guys have like a very tight knit community over there.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How is the reptile community and ball python breeding and keeping over there? Is it a high demand thing in South Africa, or is it something that's kind of on the rise or still being looked at, or
Uh,
discovered, I should
so
say, discovered.
so basically, like with you said in the beginning that the market is a bit saturated with ball pythons. So same here. There's a lot of guys breeding ball pythons, so there's a lot of breeders out there and a lot of ball pythons actually in the market. And with us having a smaller market, it does get a bit difficult, but it's fun. It's it's all it is. It's you gotta enjoy it as it comes.
Right, you gotta love it and just kind of roll with the punches as you go.
Yes.
That's awesome. And to give credit, like you just said, like reiterating, is that ball pythons being oversaturated on the market. I had brought that up. And I have a different perspective I kind of want to ask you about and see if you agree or disagree. I know a lot of people have said that they are oversaturated, they're overbred, they're overpopulated. We've heard it all. But I feel like there's a reason for it. And that reason is, like you said before, not only do they come in such a wide variety of colors and morphs and designs, they're also very docile for the most part. And they're
Yeah.
big, but they're not too big. They're pretty much everything you would want in a snake aside from the activity part. And if you're looking for a snake that's large, that's a good size, that's not going to be anaconda length, and it's
Yeah.
going to be maybe a little less food motivated, depending. I think that's why they're oversaturated because they are so well loved.
That is true. I definitely agree with that. And most people, if like at the expos, most people have ball pythons, and the reason why they have it's your beginner pet. It's the best snake to start with if you want to get into like owning a snake. And they don't have that much issues. You don't have that many problems taking care of them, and it's quite easy to actually keep and care for a ball python.
Right. As long as you're willing to do that research, and like you said, you've got the 40 gallons or whatever you're comfortable with, the snake's comfortable with, they're
Yes.
really great animals to have, and they deserve that title, I think, of just being number one loved in the snake community, or at least up there, right next
Yeah.
to blood pythons and all these other amazing species. They're right up there with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So I have kind of covered everything. Is there anything that you would like to talk about as far as ball pythons go before we close out?
So there is one tip that one of my mates actually had me test out about a year now, with especially with the ball pythons that tend to go off feed, or having them when they go on that strike,
Yeah.
where they refuse to eat. Uh, what I've noticed is if I actually cut down on feeding, so instead of feeding weekly, I do 3 feedings in a month. So one big feed, 2 smaller feeds, and I've noticed that the their response is way better than what I used to get when I fed them weekly.
Really?
Yes, and with if you have like a ball python that doesn't want to eat, whether it is because of the breeding season starting, or sometimes it's with their natural cycle. So that's something that you can't get away from. But don't over introduce feed. So if the snake doesn't feed, don't try again in the next day or the day after or so, because you end up creating a habit where they refuse feed. So if you continuously try and feed them where they won't want to eat, they will actually have the habit of not eating. So if you have a snake that is healthy, doesn't want to eat, skip a week, skip maybe 2 weeks, especially if it's healthy, and then try again.
Give them some
And
time to kind of like regulate themselves back out,
yes,
basically.
and
Okay.
if that doesn't necessarily help, you can always change something in the enclosure, like move the hide from one point to another. Just do slight changes. It does make a difference in for them, because it feels like, in my opinion, I think it feels like it's for them is a new environment, so they need to get new habits. So you just need to find a way to break the chain.
It's something fresh and something new to them, without having to
Yes,
do that extra effort of like, oh, I'm going to move you to this whole new thing. You can just do
yes,
some shifting here and there. And I
yes.
have found,
That
just
definitely
agreeing with
helps.
you, that works. I've with my boy, sometimes if I take his hides and I'll, because he's got a couple in here, but I'll move them in different spots and he'll start kind of recreating his own routine, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. No,
That is
that
interesting with the
definitely helps.
feeding.
Yeah, it's. I also, like I said, I didn't know that until a while ago, and I tried it, and it's actually working for me. It's they are growing better and faster, and the responses I get from them, it's just way better.
That is really cool. I'm gonna have to remember that when people ask about, hey, my ball python's not eating, because I never even knew that as well. Giving them like one big meal and then the smaller meals. What do you mind me asking what you normally feed
Yeah.
them? Are they on like large rats and then like fuzzies or?
So I normally go with the biggest size of the snake's body and do give. So if I want to give a big meal, I take the fattest size of the ball python and give them something about that same size. And then when I give them smaller meals, I give them like two weight relatively smaller meals. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
So, and when you're feeding a ball python, it's usually safe to say like go by the size of the largest area of their body, right?
yes, especially
Okay.
with the adults. That is what I've been using and well doing, and it's been working for me. And I haven't had any problems in the past 3 years since I've started doing that. And um, so my main thing is to use the big sizes, and then I used to only feed big, which I found wasn't ideal. That's why their feeding responses wasn't too good. So then I switched over to the big and then two smaller meals in between,
And that kind of
and then
alternate, they
skip
started
one
getting
week.
better with it.
Yes.
Nice. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. Honestly, I've never. It's funny because I've heard of it so many times. And Venom, they're not venomous, just for everyone out there. He just has the name Venom because he decided to get spicy with me the first day I brought him home. And I love Spider Man. But he's never refused any food. He's never refused a meal. But I've heard it's very, very common among ball pythons, and I've definitely had that happen before in the past. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's important to talk about feeding and just what they eat, how often they eat, and sometimes they're just being kind of picky. I've seen ball
Yeah.
pythons where it's like that rat's gray, not white. I don't want it, or like this one has spots and not stripes. It's weird.
I have the same. So that Spaz that I talked about, yeah, he does the same thing. Um, and also with feeding, I tend to do from hatchlings. I tend to feed mice and then go on to rats. Occasionally I do African soft furs. I have one snake. It's been about 3 or 4 months trying to get it off of ASFs onto rats. So one thing that I've noticed is if a snake is picky, give them what they want. If you want to transition them, it's going to take a while. And then just slowly um, try and change them into what you want them to eat.
Kind of like ease
Um,
them into it a little bit.
yes. So the way that I've I've been doing it with this female. So she is a relatively large female, also about 4 feet, 3 kilo female. I think 4 feet. Sorry, the metric system is kicking
Beautiful
in. So I have
girl,
a,
though.
and she's been an ASF feeder, like always. It's been 3 months. I managed to get her to eat a rat last week for the first time. It took a while, but she managed to eat a rat actually.
That's those moments where you're like, finally, you did it.
Yes.
Thank you. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big
No,
girl,
it's
though.
I have about two or three females about that size. Most of the ball pythons that I have is way smaller.
Do you find that females tend to be a little bit larger than males generally?
Definitely, definitely. The biggest female that I had weighed about 5 kilos.
Wow.
She was massive.
That's
She was
itty
completely massive.
bitty.
And the
Jeez.
biggest males that I had was about less than half. It's like 2 kilos.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Generally,
So
they don't
that's a
tend to get.
significant difference there.
Yeah, they don't tend to get very big, especially not the males. Some of the females they actually grow quite big, especially the older females. But I've noticed that after I'd say about 2 years, the rate that they grow at comes down significantly after like the first 2 to 3 years.
Definitely. They kind of get most of that growing in through the juvenile stage. You'll see a lot of shedding. And then
Yes,
as they get older, it kind of dies down a little bit.
yes, yeah, definitely.
That's interesting about them. And that's kind of similar to, you know, what I want to point out is that snakes never stop shedding. I had an ADHD moment and I
Yes.
was like, how do I word this? But snakes never stop shedding. So, what I've heard, and again, debunk me if I'm wrong, but regardless of what you keep them in, they're just going to keep growing. You know, it's not going to stunt
Yes.
their growth per se.
No. No, it definitely won't stunt their growth. There's no. They will
It's not the
continue to
same
grow.
as like we're going to keep this fish in this tiny little tank and it's only going to get so big and it's going to die. Like no, they're going to keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So that's another
Yeah.
thing to take into consideration.
It
No,
definitely is.
but
Yeah.
completely worth it. Is there anything else that you had questions for me or anything you wanted to tell anyone?
Not that I can think of. No,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, don't say sorry. You did phenomenal. I
um,
think we had an awesome conversation. I appreciate you coming on today and talking about
yeah.
ball pythons because they are, it's like you've said, like I've said, they're amazing species of snake. They're a great snarter snake. They're very, very easy to keep for the most part. And they do deserve that title that they have, you know? And when it comes to breeding, just keep in mind everything that you've said as far as, you know, space and making sure that those incubation times are right and making sure that the temperatures and the humidity is correct. But I've been really thrilled to have you on, and I'm really excited. I hope you get some followers from this, and who knows, maybe I'm gonna hit you up for a ball python in the future.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say this is very nerve-wracking, but it's very fun. Thank you so
Of
much.
course. Well, you're not alone. This is only my third episode, so I may not come off like it, but my heart's like, what do we say next? You know, no, you're good. We're all feeling the same vibes. You're fine, and you did phenomenal. I appreciate your time. And everyone, please give Genesis Mutations a follow because his snakes are gorgeous. And if you love ball pythons, this is the direction to go in.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Stefan.
Stefan. But yeah, you close enough.
Stefan. I'll learn it soon, I promise. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really love talking to you, and hopefully I will have you on again in the future. I would love to.
That's perfect. We'll definitely
Absolutely.
keep me in touch.
Will do. Absolutely. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for talking to me today about ball pythons. And like I said,
Thank
everyone
you.
give him a follow. I'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, of course. Bye.
Fangs, I'll bite the ass.